Right, records of service. Heisuke Todo. To chapter 1. Low romance and high corruption is your recipe. And soon we will hit the X button for skipping. There we go. Okay. I'm sure everything will work out. Okay, you're right. Sen herself has said that she intends to have Kimigiku examine things further. I'm sure everything will work out. I carried a lingering suspicion that his confident words were only a facade for my sake, but I had no desire to belittle him during what was, I'm sure, a challenging dilemma to confront. His bravery was all... The yawn happened. His bravery was all a front. Of this, I felt certain. Heisuke would be fine. Or so I had desperately hoped. A brisk, chilly wind, befitting the end of the wintry season, blew nimbly outside of my old home. But I'm fine. It seems like the winter will be coming to an end soon. It's almost spring. I think. Yeah. Oh god, yeah, it had only been a year at that point. Heisuke's eyes thinned and he let his gaze wander up towards the overcast sky. Hey, look, round 1! No, wait, round 2 technically, because Heisuke had round 1, part 1. But apparently for all of these game overs, we've got to make him endure it. Perhaps the cruelest option was to let him endure this torment until it passed. So I stood idly, unable to say... Oh my god, the words should be switched. So I stood idly, unable to say a thing about it to his face, but... Heisuke dug his fingernails into his throat, scratching madly at his skin as he screamed his lungs out. How many more times would Heisuke have to suffer his grave fate? How many more times would I have to watch Heisuke writhe in unfathomable pain like this? Heisuke! I had nothing left to tell him, so all I could do was continue to softly rub the small of his back. Oh, here we go. It stopped. We don't have to force read anymore. Watch out, Heisuke! Helplessly standing off to the side made me cringe, so I jumped out to distract Heisuke's rabid combatants. I was well aware that my swordsmanship was nowhere enough to take on a fury in battle, but if I were able to provide even the slightest bit of cover for Heisuke, it would be worth it. I took a deep breath to assure myself of my resolve, and I unsheathed my kodachi from its scabbard. Not a second after I made myself visible, I drove my kodachi into the arm of the fury attacking Heisuke, making it vulnerable to a second strike. But Heisuke, you would've... Before I had the chance to look over my shoulder, I heard the metallic hiss of a sword before it pierced into my chest. Suddenly, my breathing was strained. I heard my name being desperately called out to me, but the voice felt as though it were miles away. Then the sensation of being lifted up came from under me as my arms and legs became limp. My eyes were unable to focus on anything, which made it difficult to make out Heisuke's face as I struggled to see through the haze. This hurts! I'm so sorry, Heisuke. I don't know if we'll see each other anymore. Okay, these are gonna hurt so much for me because I love Heisuke, because he's one of my favorite boys. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt. Alright, time for round 2. Low romance, high corruption. That is your recipe. Surely the person Heisuke had been worried about was Sanan-san? That person you're worried about, is it Sanan-san? Heisuke jumped, seemingly startled by the question I had posed. Oh, so it's not him? I mean, aside from Sanan-san, I have no idea whom you could be worried about. Lies! Lies, Heisuke! Lies! Really? But you just...
いや、いきなり言い当てられちまって驚いただけだって。お前実は人の心を読む力があるんじゃねえか?
Not that I'm aware of. Judging by Heisuke's reaction when I uttered Sanan-san's name, I assumed that his attempt to reassure me was all a big ruse. Maybe I guessed incorrectly, but I had difficulty thinking of anyone it could have been.
そういや、三男さんは今どうしてるんだ?
You know, I haven't seen him since last night.
本当か? まさか勝手にどこかへ出かけてるんじゃねえだろうな。
And we can skip up. Never mind, the choice is gonna be here, and it's to make him endure it, and I hate this option so much. Although his bloodlust was sure to subside if I had only offered him my blood, we were unsure of what effects it would have on his body, wondering if giving him blood could exacerbate the frequency or the severity of his symptoms. Erring on the side of caution, all we could do was wait. Heisuke, hold on tight! Without any reasonable options available to us, I placed my hand on the small of his back in the hope that the pain would soon cease. If only I could switch places with him. A futile wish, of course, but true nonetheless. For now, I could only continue to rub his back, keeping him company until the agony subsided. Alright, where is it?
君ごとき、私の剣でも簡単に打ち果たすことができますが、せっかくですから、純血の鬼の力とやらを試させてもらうことにしましょうか。出番ですよ。相手をしてあげてください。
Sanan-san smirked cruelly, eyeing Sen as he barked his sadistic command. However, her pose shifted dramatically in response to his call. Then... Oh, fuck! Sen instinctively unsheathed the sword on her waist. Her eyes were glossy and unfocused, similar to the same lifeless stare worn by other Furies, making it difficult to gauge whether or not she was conscious. One thing was clear. Her sanity had suffered.
さあ、どうします？私を切りたくば、まず彼女を切ってもらいましょうか。
引 うだぞ三男さん。人質のつもりかよ。
Heisuke shifted his feet, readying himself to attack. However, he seemed rooted, seemingly incapable of lunging aggressively at Sen. San-San's playful taunts served their purpose, casting a threat of doubt in Heisuke. Sen kicked at the floor, thundering towards Heisuke. Her movements were so fluid, gliding across the ground as if it were a freshly frozen lake. Although Heisuke was no pushover, Sen's newfound strength caught him off guard. Like a master of swordsmanship, she weaved around him effortlessly in close distance in seconds. At this rate, Heisuke was likely to be subdued. Sen! It's me! Please, snap out of it! Sen's hollow eyes all of a sudden grew very wide. Maybe, just maybe, I could get through to her. Sen, do you recognize me? Remember our first conversation? Remember how you told me you thought my last name was pretty? Yes, Sen, that's me! A feeling of overwhelming relief came over me. Sen hadn't lost her sense of self completely. How fleeting that happiness turned out to be as the burn of cold steel pierced through my chest. Suddenly, I struggled to form coherent words. I could form the shape of her name with my lips, but no sound came out. Instead, all that escaped my mouth was a pungent, frothy wad of blood. My vision blurred, and soon my entire body became numb. The only thing my ears could make out was... a cackling laughter and the faint sound of Heisuke crying out my name. I am so sorry, Heisuke. All I wanted was to be with you. Alright, I didn't know Sanon can laugh like that. Holy shit. Snake Boy can laugh. Alright. Noted. Anyway, on to game over number 3. Low romance and high corruption is your recipe. Oh, so what are you confused about? Oh boy, we're gonna make him endure it again. Was Heisuke resigned to this fate? Suffering pain until his limbs curled into themselves? How much more torture could one person handle, tearing apart every fiber of their being? A question, frustratingly, that had no immediate answer. Heisuke! Hang in there! Heisuke! I watched his face scrunch desperately, and I could do nothing but watch, praying for this to subside. How should I respond? Calm down. You don't truly mean that, do you, Heisuke? That negative attitude won't do you any good when it comes time to fight San-San. So please, calm down. The truth is, I've got no intention of giving up on neither you nor Sen until everything's said and done. Heisuke fidgeted uncomfortably, creating a painful silence between the two of us for a moment, until he finally offered his timid, mumbled response.
悪い。俺、弱気になってたみたいだな。そうだよな。お前が友達を見捨てるなんてできるはずねえよな。わかった。千姫は一緒に助け出そう。俺もあの二人には恩があるしな。その先のことは今は考えねえようにするよ。
Heisuke.
にしてもどうしたもんかな。
Oh, this is where... Oh, okay, this is where it happens. Alright.
下手に市中に立ち入ってこっちの動きに感づかれても困るし。
待て。
Kazuma coldly interrupted Heisuke as he thought aloud. His golden eyes were turned towards a clearing in the distance, which had been completely enveloped by a thick, impenetrable darkness. All of us paused, holding our breaths before the crescendo of approaching footsteps hit our ears. It was... Was this another Fury? Or...
そこに誰かいるの？
That voice... Sen? The silhouette emerging from the darkness was becoming clearer as I called out to whom I believed it to be.
千鶴ちゃん？どうしてここに？
It is you, Sen! Oh my goodness, you're safe! Her kimono was filthy with mud and soot, like she had been wandering around the barren muck for hours. I had suspected that somehow she managed to escape, blindly traversing the mountainous path all by herself. With each of her steps, my relief soared until...
それ以上近づくな。
Kazuma's startling command halted Sen in her tracks.
何よ？
あんた仙台城に閉じ込められてたんじゃねえのか。護衛の君菊って人がそう言ってたぜ。
ええ、そうよ。見張りの隙をついて逃げ出してきたの。
お前一人でか。
こう見えても純血の鬼だもの。
Sen smirked playfully, which was a welcome sight given our fervent concern for her well-being. But rather conspicuously, her sanity was intact. Neither Heisuke nor Kazuma lowered his guard, slowly taking backward steps to keep their distance. Just then... What's wrong, Heisuke? I attempted to look at what drew his attention when... I reflexively cupped my hands around my mouth to prevent from screaming in terror. Suddenly, the eerie darkness was peppered with pairs of tiny crimson eyes. Two by two, their ominous gaze appeared in spine-chilling fashion, lurking from all corners, atop tree branches and behind tall, looming bushes. The haunting glow of their bloodthirsty eyes made my knees vigorously shiver. Were I made to guess, it looks like there was 10. No, there were more. Double that. 20. Sen, this is...
私を追ってきたのよ。千鶴ちゃん、お願い、助けて。
As the Furies sauntered towards us menacingly, they gleefully licked their lips. They wore inspective gazes, sizing up their next meal. Heisuke! Kazuma!
三男さんも次から次へと羅刹を増やしてくれやがって。これだけの数がいちゃ一晩経っても全滅させられねえかもしれねえぞ。
確かに貴様には荷が重かろうな。この俺がこの場にいることを感謝し。
それだけは何があってもごめんだよ。だ
Heisuke rashly charged at the group of furies, his cries echoing into the surrounding darkness.
数ばかりそうに薄汚いまがいものが。
Although they were completely outnumbered. They were amateurs compared to Heisuke and Kazuma, who kicked up a gust with every bone-snapping swing of their sword. Heisuke held his own, drop-kicking a fury in the chest before burying his sword into its heart, and behind him fought Kazuma, effortlessly weaving around his victims. Just then,
千鶴ちゃん。
just as I thought they were killing off the furies in exceptional time, Sen suddenly appeared at my side. I still harbored suspicions as to whether or not she could be trusted, but I lowered my guard. Don't worry, Sen. I'm sure they'll take care of everything, so just... She hadn't seemed worried at all. Her mouth perked up into an unsettling smirk that chilled me to my bone, to my core. And then she dashed behind me, slapping one hand across my mouth and gagging me silent. Then, through her fingers, she slipped a vial of bitter liquid into my covered mouth, forcing me to swallow. What is this? What just happened?
私と一緒に行きましょう。千鶴ちゃん。
Oh, that is real creepy. Oh, that's creepy. I have never seen that sprite before. Holy fuck.
あなたと私の二人で鬼も羅刹も超えた新しい生き物をどんどん生み出すのよ。私たちは新たに生まれ変わるこの国の始祖となるの。
Numbness tricked down each of my limbs, and all of a sudden I had no control of my muscles. I dropped to the floor, gazing into Sen's blank eyes as they loomed fuzzily above me. Wait, that's it? Jesus, alright. Well, interpret that ending as much as you want. I don't know if we're dead or if we're doomed. However, we need low romance and high corruption is your recipe. Alright, we're back. And make him endure it. Not even words of consolation could save him now, and I bit my tongue to spare him the pity. I uttered a silent prayer, hoping that Heisuke would come out of this episode alive. Saliva frothed from his mouth, producing an incoherent babble as he cried out in misery. His shrieks were harsh, like a wild boar catching the scent of its slaughtered kin. Heisuke! He furiously scratched at his chest, breaking into the skin and releasing an ooze of blood that seeped underneath his dirty fingernails. He dug his teeth into his lip, again drawing blood. I grew horrified in watching Heisuke literally tear himself apart, wondering how much more he'd take. His limit was undoubtedly fast approaching. Please, Heisuke, make it through this. If only I'd given you blood. These thoughts circle like clockwork in my mind as I search for any distraction to comfort myself. What? You're doing what you can to survive. What are you talking about, Heisuke? You're just doing what you can to survive, aren't you? It's not fair for you to beat yourself down for something like that. So please, don't give up.
確かに生きてはいるけど、そう遠くないうちに命を落とすのは本当だろう。そこからは絶対目をそらしちゃいけねえと思うんだ。だって俺は三男さんや羅刹隊のみんな、さっき戦った奴らと同じ
Ow.
羅刹なんだから。
Ow.
ただあいつらと違うところがたった一つだけある。
And what's that? Heisuke suddenly locked his eyes with mine. For the first time in a long while, I sensed no hint of doubt behind them, and they pierced me so intensely, it felt as though I'd been shot in the heart. What was Heisuke talking about? My heart began to race gradually, pounding inside my chest when Heisuke whispered coolly to me.
俺のそばには千鶴、お前がいてくれるってことだ。
Skip! Sen, are you okay? Oh, I just realized Sen does have 3 horns. Sen suddenly looked up, stopping herself from lapping up the blood splattered on her palms.
姫様、私です。お分かりになりますか？キク、千鶴さん。
Her pupils undilated, regaining some sense of self.
この血は。
It seemed Kimigiku and I got through to her. Or maybe somehow Kazuma's blood worked to counteract the effects of the water of life. Sen no longer had a deranged look in her face, and she touched her cheeks in surprise.
そうだ、私血を飲まされて。
Sen, hang in there! Her eyes flickered between sanity and insanity, as if she was fighting an internal battle to regain control of her body. Which meant that it wasn't over yet, that Sen hadn't completely exorcised the evil festering inside of her. Through ragged, pained breaths, she spoke, albeit somehow retaining her air of refinement.
おきく。いいえ、君菊。八瀬の里の姫として命じます。姫様。
Kimigiku hurriedly straightened her back, like a well-trained dog beckoning to its master. However, Sen's order caught me by surprise, and I cupped my mouth in horror.
今のうちに私の命を取りなさい。
What? What are you saying, Sen?
そのままの意味よ。私、羅刹の血に負けちゃったみたい。純潔の鬼、失格ね。このままだと私、あなた方を殺してしまう。
But just look at you. You're speaking to us normally. Everything will be okay. Sweat glistened on Sen's face, and she eked a smile out of pity.
そう見える。
The struggle in Sen's face was palpable, and it took every bit of strength she had to suppress the murderous instincts bubbling underneath. She reached her hand into her pocket, pulling from it a ceremonial dagger that she handed to Kimigiku.
嫌な役目を押し付けてごめんなさいね、おきく。
Kimigiku's eyelashes fluttered as she held the dagger loosely in her hand.
私の方こそあなたをお守りするという役目を果たせず、こうしてお命を奪ってしまうなんてお詫びのしようもありません。お許しください。私もすぐに参ります。ごめん。
Sen slowly lowered her arms, trembling nervously at her side. She took a deep breath in anticipation.
あんまり長く抑えていられそうにないわ。お願い、早く。
Wait, Kimigiku, Sen is still...
おきく、早く、早く。
Sen's expression dropped suddenly, her eyes shining wildly with madness.
殺させて。
Sen attempted to pry the dagger from Kimigiku's hands when... A splatter of blood splashed upwards, forming into the shape of petal blossoms cascading in midair. Rather than Kimigiku or myself, it was Sen who seemed the most confused.
どうなってるの？私。
She swung the dagger around hysterically. Another splash of crimson-colored blood petals danced above us before spilling onto the floor.
いや、やめて。こんなの、いや。
Her body and mind were at odds with one another. Her mind attempted to reclaim itself, while her body thrashed about with the dagger in hand.
おきく、千鶴ちゃん。私。
Tears streamed down her face, but her lips formed into a sadistic grin.
ごめんなさい。私。ごめんなさい。
She apologized profusely, though she continued to stab us with wild abandon, pushing and pulling the dagger into her flesh uncontrollably. Soon the grueling pain of the dagger went numb, and I almost pitied Sen, reaching to touch her cheeks.
ごめんね、千鶴ちゃん。
I'm sorry too, Sen.
自分の意志じゃ殺されてあげることもできないなんて。
Forgiving me for not killing you fast enough. These were my last moments, it seemed. After a while, I went completely numb. My vision grew hazy, only making out her teardrops falling into the pool of blood spurting from my chest. If only there was a way to save her. Well, that was a way to go. So we're doing Low romance and low corruption is your recipe for this. And we give him blood. That's the first step. And then we skip. Then we... you're doing what you can to survive. However, just as I got within arm's reach of her, Kimigiku called out to me, stopping me in my tracks.
千鶴さん、それ以上近づいてはいけません。
Sun's golden eyes glowed hazily, almost as though she had fallen into a trance. Sen, it's me, Chizuru! You remember me, right? Her eyes were unfocused as they slowly turned to face me. I know that the real Sen is in there somewhere. The bloody dagger dropped from Sen's hand, and she touched her fingers with her to her temples languidly. Her voice stammered and she took slow, clumsy steps backwards. 1 step, 2 steps, then... her body slumped to the floor. Sen! I ran from behind Kimigiku to check on the princess's pulse.
千鶴さん、姫様は。
Well, her pulse is still beating, so I think she'll be okay. She's just lost consciousness again.
本当ですか。それでは。
All that was left for us to do was to destroy Sanan-san, once and for all. A voice called out to me, taking me aback.
千鶴、お前千姫を連れて先にこの城を出ろ。
Oh no, 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 no! What? Why?
お前がここにいると戦いにくいんだ。巻き込んじまうかもしれねえし。
You're telling me this now?
いいから早く。
Heisuke was trading blows with Sanan-san, their blades dancing like two silver koi fish swirling in a pond. But
雪村君には羅刹の本性をむき出しにするところを見られたくないというわけですか。その情こそが君の成長を遅らせている最大の原因だというのに。
Heisuke attempted a jab, but Sanan-san narrowly dodged it, moving to smack the sword from Heisuke's hand.
これで終わりです。
Heisuke! Sanan-san lowered his knees, readying himself to thrust his sword into Heisuke's heart when... I heard the hair-raising sound of flesh being pierced. I shut my eyes in horror, traumatized by the thought. What was that? Had Heisuke been stabbed? I sheepishly opened my eyelids and saw...
この俺もいるということを忘れてもらってまがい。
I'm sorry, Cosmo, I couldn't hear you. Your mixing sucks. That voice. Cosmo! Cosmo tightly clutched his sword, twisting the blade as he drove it deeper into Sanan's chest. Sanan-san, however, hadn't even flinched.
なるほど。ですが、先ほど姫に負わされた傷が癒え切るまでにはもうしばらくかかるはずですよ。
Sanan-san's lip curled into a wry smirk, and he pulled Cosmo's sword from out of his chest with ease.
真の羅刹となったこの私と違ってね。
Cosmo's sword had just barely missed Sanan-san's heart, a crushing stroke of misfortune. In a matter of an instant, the profusely bleeding wound on Sanan-san's chest had sealed itself.
千鶴、頼む。先に逃げてくれ。
But
この俺が手助けしてやるからには負けはない。言う通りにしろ。
the thought of leaving without Heisuke induced a nauseating bout of anxiety, but I had to trust that the two of them together would be enough to best Sanan-san, who demonstrated that his powers were no longer something to ignore. I nodded, accepting Heisuke's offer to leave, but... Promise me, Heisuke. Promise that you'll make it out of this alive, that you'll win this battle and return to me. Promise! Heisuke, I will wait for you until the end of time.
ああ、分かってるって。
As long as Heisuke kept his head up, he'd be safe. He would never, ever break a promise to me. Nor had he ever done anything to raise distrust and concern in my eyes. He was a man of virtue. Kimikiku, let's go.
はい。姫様は私が抱えます。あなたは私の後ろをついてきてください。
Once more, I turned to face Heisuke, nodding at him. Then Kimikiku and I sprinted from the hall. We flung our legs forward, giving ourselves no chance to catch our breath, into a hall that was pungent with the stink of blood. As I looked down, I locked eyes with a decapitated Fury, and I was careful not to slip in any blood. Ew. Ugh. I had to keep running, not allowing myself to look back. We've been running so frantically that my heart was throbbing furiously in my chest. Was Heisuke still battling Sanan-san? I know he'll make it. Just then, something interrupted my line of thought.
姫様、気がついたのですね。
おきくん、どうしてここに？そうだ、確か私、三男さんに。
彼女と東堂さん、そして風間千景が姫様を助けてくださったのですよ。
本当に？でも、東堂さんと風間の姿は見当たらないけど。
Heisuke and Kazuma will be right behind us in no time.
ですから私たちは彼らの帰りを待ちましょう。
After fleeing hurriedly from the castle, the three of us waited outside for Heisuke and Kazuma. We stood idly, watching sunlight emerge from beneath the horizon in the sky to the east. No. You think anything bad happened to them?
三男や羅刹たちが出てこないということは、東堂さんたちは倒されていないはずですが。
I'm gonna go check on them.
いえ、あなたはここでお待ちください。中の様子でしたら、私が。
Kimikiku turned towards the enormous castle doors to make her way back inside.
待って、城の中から誰か出てくるわ。
Just as Sen said, a thin figure was walking towards us from inside of the castle, sauntering calmly over the dismembered corpses strung along the floor. He had been too far away for me to make out the features of his face, and I became a little nervous. Who was that? Heisuke? Kazuma? Could it be Sanan-san? My stomach began to ache out of anxiety, waiting for the figure to make its final approach. Until finally, I made it out to be... Kazuma? I blurted out his name without thinking, staring at him blankly as he stepped out from the castle doors. Why? I was so confused. Why was Kazuma exiting the castle alone? Why didn't he have Heisuke with him? Heisuke promised me that he would defeat Sanan-san and make his way to me.
あの東堂という男、三男や羅刹たちを見事に打ち果たした。
So why isn't he here? Perhaps he was exhausted after a long night of fighting, taking a moment to rest before coming out. If I had just waited here, then surely he would greet me with a smile any minute now.
だがその戦いで身の内に残った生命力をすべて使い果たし灰となって生き絶えた。
Cosma shattered what little hope I'd had left with his emotionless report. What?
おそらくお前には死に際の姿を見せたくなかったのだろう。
Suddenly, I felt numb, and Cosma's words seemed to travel in one ear and out the other. Everything went still, the only other sound being the restless wind brushing against the hillside. Heisuke was dead? There was no body to bury, only ash. I couldn't believe it. He made me a promise. He always kept his word. I hadn't even considered the notion of never seeing him again. Cosman walked up to me, taking my hand in his. Then he placed something small in the middle of my palm, and without looking, I turned it in my fingers. This is a button sewn previously on Heisuke's coat. A dried layer of blood was smattered on top of it.
奴の形見だ。持っておけ。
A deluge of tears came flowing uncontrollably down my cheeks. Heisuke is... No. Heisuke was... the only person in the world who meant more to me than anything was now just a memory. So it's not over. Sun and Kimikuku offered me a place to refuge in Yase village, but I had to decline their invitation, instead making my way for the Yukimura village, which allegedly had been the place of my birth. From what I'd been told, the village was abandoned, leaving no one there for me to find, but I figured it'd be the perfect place to bask in my memory of Heisuke within my heart, alone. Stepping into the village, I was overwhelmed with deja vu, soaking in a quaint, indelible calmness. For once, I felt at home, like my entire life had been leading me back here. My spirit felt in tune with the energy permeating every corner. I wish Heisuke were here with me to see this. Being born and raised in Edo, Heisuke may have found rural life to be tiresome after a while. But look, Heisuke, this is where I was born. I gripped the button nestled in my pocket and spoke to him from my heart, wherever he may be.